A talent like Abdullah Mason doesn't just arrive quietly. He announces himself in flashes of brilliance, in bursts of speed that feel almost unfair, and in moments where the line between prospect and future champion begins to blur. At just 22 years old, there's still time before he reaches his physical prime. But what makes him so dangerous is that he already looks like a finished product in so many ways. The precision, the composure, the raw explosiveness, it's all there. And yet, what truly sets him apart isn't just what he does when everything is going his way, but how he reacts when things don't. Early in his rise, many opponents made the same mistake. They saw the youth, the relative inexperience, and assumed they were stepping in with someone they could test, maybe even break. But that assumption has proven costly time and time again, because when Abdullah Mason is underestimated, he doesn't just win, he makes a statement. His unbeaten run has been built not just on victories, but on moments that leave a lasting impression, moments where his opponents realize far too late that they are dealing with something far more dangerous than expected. That reality hit hard in his clash with Johan Vasquez, a fight that was supposed to be another step forward, but quickly turned into something far more complicated. For the first time in his professional career, Mason was forced to confront adversity in its rawest form. The rhythm he usually controlled was disrupted, the timing he relied on was challenged, and suddenly, he found himself on the canvas. Not once, but twice. In that instant, the aura of invincibility cracked just enough for everyone watching to ask the same question: how would he respond? And that's where something shifted, because great fighters aren't defined by perfect performances. They're defined by what they do when things go wrong. Mason didn't panic. He didn't unravel. Instead, he adapted. He tightened his approach, sharpened his focus, and began to break his opponent down with calculated precision. The same aggression that had momentarily betrayed him was now controlled, directed with purpose. And when the finish came, it wasn't reckless, it was clinical. A perfectly placed body shot, buried deep into the solar plexus, ended the fight in a way that felt inevitable. It wasn't just a win. It was a lesson, a reminder that even when pushed to the edge, Abdullah Mason remains in control. That experience carried into his next performances, where a different version of Mason began to emerge. Against Manuel Jaimes, there was no chaos, no unnecessary risk. Instead, there was dominance. From the opening moments, he dictated the pace with a jab that wasn't just a rangefinder, but a weapon in its own right. Every time it landed, it froze his opponent just long enough to set up something more dangerous. And that's the real problem with facing Mason. He doesn't just rely on one thing. The jab leads to the uppercut opens the body, and the body shots slowly drain the will out of anyone standing in front of him. There's a rhythm to his offense, but it's not predictable. It's layered. You don't know what's coming next, only that something is, and when it lands with intent. Against Jaimes, that intent was clear. This wasn't just about winning rounds, it was about making a statement. Every punch carried weight, every combination was delivered with purpose, and by the time the fight reached its conclusion, there was no doubt who controlled every second of it. It was clean, it was efficient, and it was exactly what a rising star needed after a moment of vulnerability. But if that performance showed control, his bout with Carlos Ornelas revealed something else entirely, because by this point, opponents had started to adjust. They weren't rushing in recklessly anymore. They were cautious, defensive, trying to slow the pace and disrupt the flow that Mason thrives on. And for a young fighter, that can be a dangerous scenario. It's easy to get frustrated, to force openings that aren't there. But Mason didn't fall into that trap. Instead, he waited. He read the movement, studied the reactions, and slowly began to dismantle his opponent piece by piece. The feints became more pronounced, the timing more precise. He wasn't just throwing punches, he was setting traps. And once those traps were sprung, the outcome felt unavoidable. A sharp counter here, a crushing body shot there, and suddenly the resistance began to fade. By the time the finish came, it felt less like a sudden ending, and more like the final step in a process that had been unfolding from the very first round. And then came Jeremiah Nak, a fighter who represented something different, a legitimate test. Someone with experience, power, and the kind of unpredictability that can derail a rising prospect. This wasn't just another fight, it was a proving ground. A moment where Mason had to show not just skill, but maturity. From the opening bell, there was a noticeable shift in his approach. He wasn't rushing, he understood the danger in front of him and adjusted accordingly. The jab was still there, but now it served a different purpose. It controlled distance, disrupted rhythm, and kept Nakathila from settling into any kind of comfort. And as the rounds progressed, the pressure began to build. What makes Mason so difficult to deal with is how he blends offense with awareness. Even when he's pressing forward, he's thinking, calculating, anticipating. He sees openings before they fully form, reacts to movements before they're completed. And against Nakathila, that awareness became the difference. Every time his opponent tried to mount an offense, Mason was already a step ahead, countering, adjusting, breaking him down. By the time the fight was stopped, There was no controversy, no debate. It was the natural conclusion to a performance that had steadily built toward that moment. Another win, another statement, and another step closer to something bigger. Because that's the direction this is all heading. Each fight, each performance, is moving Abdullah Mason closer to the moment where potential turns into legacy. The tools are already there, the speed, the power, the intelligence, but more importantly, so is the mindset. The ability to learn, to adapt, to evolve with every challenge placed in front of him. And that's what makes this journey so compelling, because we're not just watching a talented fighter win fights. We're watching the formation of something much greater, a career that feels like it's building toward a defining moment, a breakthrough that could change everything. So now the question becomes unavoidable. How far can he go? Is this just the rise of another contender, or are we witnessing the early stages of a future world champion in the making? Let me know what you think about Abdullah Mason and his future in the sport. Do you believe he has what it takes to dominate the division, or are there still questions that need to be answered? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next deep dive into boxing's most exciting rising stars.